Have you ever considered that the course of history is sometimes shaped not by mighty armies, not by glorious emperors, but by a quiet young woman whom fate seemed to have forgotten? What do you think an orphan, a despised foreigner, could possibly do amidst the layered conspiracies of the world's most powerful empire? They called her the exotic desert flower, a beautiful but lifeless ornament. They had no idea that hidden behind that fragile beauty was a will of iron, a sharp intellect, and a heart that held the power to overturn a brutal plan of genocide. This is not a fairy tale about a prince and a princess. This is a breathtaking political chess match, a battle of wits, and the greatest upset ever to unfold along the legendary Silk Road. It is a story of a courage, of destiny, and of an ending that no history book has ever dared to record in its entirety. Our channel will pull you through the dust of time to witness it all. And before the curtain of history is drawn, take just a moment. Let us know where in the world you're listening from and what time it is for you. Leave a comment so we can feel that connection across space and time together in this very moment. Now take a deep breath. The capital city of Chang'an awaits. In the golden age of the Silk Road Empire, when the power of Emperor Long stretched like a tapestry from the cold northern steppes to the warm southern ports, the capital city of Chang'an was the axis upon which the world turned. Long was a great emperor, a brilliant strategist who had expanded the empire's borders to unprecedented limits. But the greater the power, the deeper the loneliness. Seated on his dragon-carved throne, he looked down upon his subjects, seeing their bowed heads, but never a single understanding heart. To display his unparalleled greatness and perhaps to banish the chill in his own soul, Emperor Long decreed a grand feast to last for 180 days. For 180 days, the entire empire was steeped in celebration. Precious wines from the west, fine silks from the east, and exotic spices from the south all flowed into Chang'an like rivers to the sea. Generals, nobles, and emissaries from all 127 provinces gathered, their faces beaming with joy, yet their eyes concealed their own private calculations of power and ambition. They raised goblets of pure gold, toasting Long greatness, but within their hearts were the undercurrents of power and greed. On the final day of the grand feast, when the wine had taken its full effect and the pride of a king had reached its zenith, Long made a demand. He wanted Empress Lien, the most noble and beautiful woman in the empire, to wear her crown and her most magnificent imperial robes and present herself before his guests, so they could admire her beauty, as if to affirm that everything precious in this world belonged to him. The news reached the Empress's palace. She remained silent for a long while, gazing out at the tranquil garden. She was not a mere ornament. Empress Lien, a woman of principle and self-respect, knew this demand was not just the whim of a drunken man. It was a symbol of a decision she had hopelessly opposed for months. The decision to pour the nation's resources, the very blood of its soldiers, into a new conquest in the West, a war she deemed unjust and wasteful. She sent back her reply, gentle but firm. She refused. The entire banquet fell silent, a silence more terrifying than 1,000 words. Emperor Long face, once flushed with wine, turned purple with rage. To be refused, publicly, in front of his entire court and foreign emissaries. It was a slap to the face of the Son of Heaven. This humiliation was unforgivable. His fury erupted like a volcano. From the crowd of officials, one man stepped forward. It was General Zhao, a man with eyes as sharp as daggers and a chilling smile. He proclaimed, "Your Majesty, the Empress's actions are not mere disobedience. They are the seeds of rebellion. If today the Empress dares to defy Your Majesty, tomorrow every woman in this empire will disrespect her husband. The law will be scorned and discipline will crumble." This flame must be extinguished before it becomes a wildfire. Zhao's words were like fuel poured on the fire. He was not just speaking of the king's honor. He was speaking of the stability of an entire empire. He had turned a personal matter into a political crisis. Long Ui, blinded by his rage, listened. A decree was drafted that very night. Empress Lian was deposed, stripped of all her titles, and confined to the cold palace. The flame of her pride had been extinguished by a storm of power. But no one, not Emperor Long Ui nor General Zhao, knew that deposing Empress Lian was not an end. It was only the beginning. The invisible hand of Chum Destiny had just created a deadly power vacuum in the Forbidden Palace, and it was waiting for someone extraordinary to fill it. At that same moment, in a bustling quarter of Chang'an reserved for foreign merchants, a young woman was quietly brewing tea. Her name was Anya, or as she was known by her people, Anya. Anya was an orphan from the No-Yet Chi tribe, a small but resilient people who lived along the Silk Road. After a tragedy, she was taken in by her uncle, Kalin, a skilled merchant and a seasoned war veteran, who brought her to Chang'an to raise her. Kalin taught Anya not only how to trade, but how to read people, how to survive in a complex world. He often told her, "Remember, Anyan, silence is sometimes the sharpest weapon, and listening is the master key. Never let others see all that you think, and always be observant." When the imperial edict was issued to select beautiful young women from across the empire to find a new empress, fate came knocking on their small door. Kalin was hesitant, but he saw something special in his niece, a latent royal aura. Anya, with the distinct beauty of a daughter of the desert, her eyes as deep as the night sky and her serene wisdom, easily passed the initial selections and was brought into the palace. The imperial palace was a completely different world. It was magnificent, luxurious, but also cold and filled with traps. While the other young women tried to display their beauty using gold and jewels as adornments, Anya chose simplicity. She used humility and a pure spirit to make herself stand out. She did not compete, she did not flatter. She simply observed, learned, and waited. And then the fateful day arrived. When Anya entered the grand hall, Emperor Long Ui, who had grown weary of cookie-cutter beauties and empty flattery, suddenly paused. He did not just see a beautiful young woman. Through Anya's eyes, he seemed to see a peace he had long since lost. He saw a vast loneliness like the desert of her homeland, a silent empathy, a strange connection. An invisible thread had just been formed between the powerful emperor and the foreign orphan. In that moment, Long Ui made his decision. He chose Anya. He placed the empress's crown on her head, to the astonishment of the entire court. The exotic desert flower had become the mother of the nation. But both Anya and Kalin knew this was only the first move in a much larger game of chess. She had been placed in this position not just for her beauty. Destiny had put her here in the eye of the storm for a much higher purpose, a purpose that would soon demand all her courage and sacrifice. In Long Ui's court, power was divided like a chessboard, and the most powerful, most dangerous piece after the emperor himself was General Zhao. He was not just a general. He was the embodiment of a purist ideology. In Zhao's eyes, the great Silk Road Empire was great because of the pure blood and culture of his people. He despised the foreigners, the merchants, the tribes living along the Silk Road. He saw them as impurities, as seeds that were weakening the empire from within. The rise of Anya, a foreigner from the No-Yet Chi tribe, to the position of Empress was, to Zhao, like a dagger in his eye. Every time he saw Anya sitting beside the emperor, his hatred boiled. He did not just hate Anya, he hated everything she represented. Diversity, cultural exchange, the success of those who were not of his blood. And then a small incident ignited the fire of Zhao's hatred into a genocidal plan. By order of the emperor, all officials in the court were to bow their heads in respect when passing the Grand General's residence. Everyone complied except for one person. It was Kalin, Empress Anya's uncle. Kalin did not bow, not because he was arrogant, but because his faith and the pride of his people allowed him to kneel only before his god, not a mortal man, even if that man was the Grand General. Day after day, Zhao witnessed Kalin's defiance. His ego was deeply wounded. A mere old foreigner dares to disrespect me? His bruised pride morphed into a pathological hatred. He had his men investigate, and when he learned that Kalin was of the Nguyen Chi tribe, the same tribe as Empress Anya, a wicked smile spread across his face. He had found a way to remove the thorn in his side, and what's more, to uproot an entire people. He did not want to punish Kalin alone. He wanted total annihilation. He wanted to wipe the name Nguyen Chi from the empire's map. Zhao went to court, knelt before Long Ui, his face a mask of concern for the nation. He proclaimed, "Your Majesty, I have lost sleep for many nights, worrying about a threat to the safety of our empire. There is a people scattered throughout our provinces, the Nguyen Chi. They live by their own laws, have their own faith, and do not follow our national customs. Their hearts do not belong to your Majesty, but to some distant land. They are like venomous snakes hiding in the tall grass, waiting for the day to strike at the heel of the empire. A venomous snake never makes a sound before it bites, your Majesty. To allow them to exist is to nurture the seeds of rebellion. I implore you, act before it is too late." Long Ui, an emperor who was naturally suspicious and still haunted by the defiance of Empress Lien, was manipulated by Zhao's words. The image of the venomous snake stuck in his mind. The prosperity of the Silk Road also meant there were too many foreign elements he could not control. Zhao had struck the emperor's most sensitive nerve. "Then what do you suggest we do?" Long Yi asked. Zhao bowed his head low, his voice dripping with cunning. "For the longevity of the empire, I beseech you to issue a decree. On a designated day, allow the people of the empire to purge this entire tribe. Men, women, the elderly, children, spare no one. Only by removing this tumor can the body of the empire be healthy again." A silence fell over the Jade Hall. The very air seemed to freeze at the cruelty of the proposal. But Long Ui, his reason clouded by the fear of betrayal, nodded. He removed his jade ring, carved with the imperial dragon, the symbol of his supreme authority, and gave it to Zhao. "You will draft the decree yourself." The ring was handed over. The destiny of an entire people had just been sealed. The death decree, stamped with the bright red seal of the royal family, was quickly dispatched by the fastest riders to all 127 provinces. The sound of their horses' hooves sowed terror. The decree stated clearly, on the 13th day of the 12th month, all people of the Nguyen Chi tribe would be considered enemies of the empire and would be exterminated. Their property would belong to those who carried out the act. The news spread like a plague. From bustling cities to remote oases, wherever the Nguyen Chi lived, the air became thick with sorrow. Wails of anguish arose. They wore sackcloth, sprinkled ash on their heads, and looked to the heavens in despair. The sentence had been sealed. It was irrevocable. A legalized genocide was about to take place. When Kalin heard the news, he was numb, but the pain quickly turned into action. He tore his robes, went straight to the palace gates, and cried out in anguish. He knew that the only hope for his people now lay not in swords or armies. The only hope was behind those towering walls, the one wearing the Empress's crown, his niece, Anya. News of Kalin and the death decree quickly reached Anya through her trusted handmaidens. Her heart felt as if it were being crushed. She sent someone to inquire about the situation. Kaelin did not answer. He simply sent back a copy of the decree and a message that would change her life forever. The message read, "Go to the Emperor, plead for your people. You are the only hope." Anya read it, and her whole body trembled, not from the cold, but from fear. A primal fear seized her. The laws of this palace were harsher than the desert. Anyone, even the Empress, who entered the court unsummoned by the Emperor, faced a single punishment: death. Unless the king extended his golden scepter as a sign of pardon. And for 30 days, Long Hui had not summoned her. She sent a reply to Kaelin, explaining the cruel law. "I cannot. To approach him now is suicide." Kaelin received her answer. His heart shattered, but then a fire of determination ignited within him. He sent back a second message with words that seemed to be carved with a knife into Anya's mind. "Do you think you will escape just because you are in the palace? Do not deceive yourself, Anya. That decree spares no one, not even a foreign-born empress. If you remain silent at this time, salvation for our people might arise from somewhere else, but you and all your father's family will be destroyed. And ask yourself, who knows? Perhaps destiny brought you to the throne for such a time as this." Kaelin's words were like sledgehammers striking Anya's mind and heart. She stood frozen in the magnificent, opulent palace, yet felt more alone and small than ever before. She looked in the mirror, saw the image of an empress, but behind it was a trembling orphan girl. An intense inner battle raged within her. On one side was the fear of imminent death, of violating the palace laws, but on the other side, there was an even greater fear. She was afraid to face Long Hui. She had begun to develop real feelings for the lonely emperor. If she revealed the truth that she was Nguyen Chi, wouldn't she be admitting she had deceived him all this time? How would he look at her? As a liar? A foreign spy planted in his court? The nascent affection he had for her, the peace he found in her presence, it would all vanish into thin air. Her heart was torn in two. One piece belonged to the lonely emperor, the other to her people, awaiting their doom. But then Kaelin's words echoed again, "For such a time as this." She realized this was no longer a choice between her own life and death. It was a choice between her personal feelings and the survival of an entire people. She had to choose. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but her eyes became resolute. The fear was still there, but courage had risen. She sent a final message to Kaelin, a steely oath. "Go gather all the Nguyen Chi in Chang'an. Fast and pray for me for 3 days. I will go to the emperor. I will defy the law. If this love must die for my people to live, I accept. And if I must perish, I will perish." On the third day, after 3 days of silent prayer, Anya shed her usual simplicity. She put on her most splendid imperial robes, applied her makeup meticulously, not to seduce, but to arm herself with the power and dignity of her station. Every step she took towards the main hall felt as heavy as lead, but her back was straight. She knew she was walking towards her destiny. It was either death or salvation. There was no other path. She stood in the inner courtyard, a place she was forbidden to enter. Emperor Long Hui was on his throne, and when he saw her, a flash of surprise crossed his eyes, quickly replaced by a frown. But as he looked closer at Anya, at the determination in her eyes, his anger subsided. He saw a tragic beauty, an extraordinary bravery. Time seemed to stop. The entire court held its breath. And then, slowly, Long Hui extended his golden scepter towards her, a gesture that granted life. Anya walked forward, relieved, but her heart was still pounding. She touched the tip of the scepter. "What is it you desire, my Empress?" Long Hui asked, his voice softer than he intended. "Even if it is half of my kingdom, it shall be yours." Anya looked up, but instead of stating her plea, She smiled mysteriously. "Your Majesty, I have only one small request. I ask that you and Grand General Jiao accept my invitation to a banquet I have personally prepared for this evening." A life and death game of chess had officially begun. The first banquet was set in a secluded imperial garden, under the moonlight and the glow of shimmering lanterns. The atmosphere was both lavish and fraught with tension. Emperor Long Ui and General Zhao sat across from Anya, both trying to conceal their curiosity. Why would the Empress risk her life just to invite them to dinner? What was her real request? Anya, with her wisdom, did not touch upon the life or death matter. She spoke of poetry, of art, of the stars in the sky. She poured wine for the Emperor, served food to Jiao, playing the part of a perfect wife and hostess. Her calmness only made the two most powerful men in the Empire more confused and impatient. The banquet ended without a single plea being uttered. Instead, Anya smiled and said, "I hope Your Majesty and the Grand General had a pleasant evening. Please accept my invitation once more for tomorrow night. Then I will reveal my true request." The game was extended for another day. The tension mounted. Meanwhile, outside the palace walls, Kalen did not rest. He knew Anya was buying time, and he had to use every single second. Through his connections as a longtime merchant, he had uncovered a shocking plot. Jiao was not just using words to persuade the Emperor. He had fabricated evidence. He had secretly sent his men, disguised as members of the Nguyen Chi tribe, to attack a royal granary on the outskirts of the city in order to create a solid pretext, proving that the Nguyen Chi were indeed dangerous rebels. Kalen immediately sought out a guard named Bao, an old comrade from his years in the army. Bao was the one Zhao had forced to lead the disguised soldiers. Kalen knew Bao was a good man, trapped between his commander's orders and his own conscience. Their meeting was brief but heavy with meaning. Kalen didn't command him. He simply said, "I know you are a good man, Bao. Do not let your hands be stained with innocent blood. The truth will one day come to light." That night, in the palace, Emperor Long Ui could not sleep. The image of Anya with her mysterious eyes and her promise of a true request haunted him. Something was wrong. A sense of unease grew within him. Unable to bear the silence of the long night, he decided to patrol the palace, something he rarely did. And it was destiny that guided his steps. As he passed a dark corner of the garden, he happened to overhear voices. It was the voice of General Zhao, whispering angrily to a soldier. That soldier was Bao. "You must play your part perfectly tomorrow," Zhao hissed. "When I ask, you will confess that it was the Nguyen Chi people who attacked the granary. Remember, the lives of your entire family are in my hands." Long Ui stood frozen in the shadows. All the disparate pieces suddenly clicked into a complete picture. Zhao's hatred for foreigners, Anya's desperate risk, the accusation of a rebellion. It was all a conspiracy, a monumental conspiracy. His anger flared, but this time it was not a blind rage. It was the cold fury of a king who had been deceived. He quietly returned to his chambers, undetected. Immediately he sent a secret order to summon Kalen. He vaguely remembered that years ago this very man had bravely saved him from a wild horse during a hunt. When Kalen knelt before him, Long Ui did not ask many questions. He simply said, "Tell me everything you know about Zhao and the Nguyen Chi." Kalen told him everything. About Zhao's hatred, about the plot to attack the granary, about the innocence of his people. The next morning, just before the second banquet was to begin, an unprecedented scene took place in Chang'an. General Zhao, preparing to enter the palace, suddenly received an imperial edict. The emperor summoned him to the main square. When Zhao arrived, he saw Kalen standing there, along with a royal steed and a magnificent brocade robe. Emperor Long Ui, from a high balcony, proclaimed, "Grand General Zhao, I have just learned that Kalen here is a righteous man who has performed a great service by exposing a plot to sabotage a royal granary. I wish to reward him. You, as the Grand General, will personally dress him in this robe of honor and lead his horse for a parade around the capital, so that all the people may know of his good deed." Zhao's face turned ashen. He froze. He understood instantly. The Emperor knew. The game had been turned on its head, but faced with a direct imperial command, he could not disobey. He, the arrogant General Zhao, had to bow to place the robe of honor on his mortal enemy. He had to take the reins to lead the horse amidst the whispers and astonished gazes of the populace. Every step was a humiliation, a knife in his pride. The great reversal had begun. The second banquet took place, but the atmosphere had completely changed. General Zhao sat there, his face gray, not daring to lift his head. Emperor Long Ui was terrifyingly calm. After 3 rounds of wine, Long Ui turned to Anya. "Now, tell me your true request, my Empress." Anya took a deep breath, then she left her seat, walked to the center of the hall and knelt. This time, not out of fear, but with all her dignity and solemnity. "Your Majesty," her voice rang out, clear and strong, "I do not ask for gold or silver, nor do I ask for half the kingdom. I have only one request. I beg you to grant me my life." Long Ui frowned. "I have already pardoned you, and I beg you to grant me the lives of my people as well." Anya looked up, her eyes welling with tears, but her gaze unwavering. "I am one of the Nguyen people. My people and I have been sold, to be destroyed, to be killed, to be utterly annihilated by a decree that your Majesty himself has issued." Silence enveloped the hall. Zhao trembled uncontrollably. Who would dare do such a thing?" Long Ui thundered, though he already knew the answer. Anya said nothing. She just slowly turned her head, her gaze as sharp as a blade, and stared directly at General Zhao. "That enemy, the one who plotted to harm the innocent and deceive your Majesty, is the man sitting right there, Grand General Zhao." At that very moment, with a wave of Long Ui's hand, the hall doors swung open. The Imperial Guards brought in the soldier, Bao. Bao knelt, and before everyone present, he exposed Zhao's entire plan, from staging the attack on the granary to threatening him to falsely accuse the Nguyen chief. The evidence was undeniable. Zhao had no words left to defend himself. He collapsed to the floor, babbling for mercy, but it was too late. "Seize him," Long Ui commanded. "Hang him on the very gallows he intended for the innocent." Justice had been served, but the drama was not over. Long Ui looked at Anya, still kneeling on the floor. The anger within him had vanished, replaced by remorse, astonishment, and a profound admiration. He stepped down from his throne, an act no emperor had ever done before. He walked to Anya and with his own hands helped her to her feet. He looked deep into her eyes and said, his voice filled with emotion, "I was wrong to listen to a wicked man. I was wrong to let suspicion cloud my judgment. But I was right about one thing. I was right to choose you as my Empress. Your love is not just for me, but for your entire people. That is the true heart of a queen." In that moment, the bond between them was no longer just attraction or sympathy. It had become respect, understanding, and a true love, forged in fire and conspiracy. The evil had been punished, but the death decree was still in effect. The laws of the empire could not be revoked. Once again, Anya and Kalen faced a challenge, but this time they were not alone. Emperor Long Ui was on their side. He said, "I cannot revoke the old decree, but I can issue a new one." With the Emperor's permission, Kalen, who now had his complete trust, personally drafted a new edict. This decree not only granted the Nguyen people the right to assemble, arm themselves, and defend themselves against anyone who attacked them on the 13th day of the 12th month. It went further. The new decree publicly praised the contributions of the Nguyen Chi and other peoples to the prosperity of the Silk Road, and solemnly declared them an indispensable part of the empire. The second decree was dispatched even faster than the first, but this time it did not carry fear, but hope. Where there had been wailing, there were now cheers. Where there had been despair, there was now light. On that fateful day when some greedy individuals, incited by the old decree, still dared to attack, they were met by a Nguyen Chi people who were no longer afraid. They stood up, united, and fought with the courage of those defending their families and their honor under the protection of the emperor himself. The battle was brief. The wicked were defeated. And so the day once designated for destruction became a day of rebirth. To commemorate this miraculous event, Empress Anya and Emperor Long Ui declared it a new holiday for the empire, the Festival of Harmony. It was a day when all cultures and peoples within the empire would celebrate together, exchange gifts, and share food with the poor. A day to remember that diversity was not a weakness, but the greatest strength. Kalin was promoted to Grand Minister, responsible for overseeing and promoting trade along the Silk Road, ensuring fairness for all merchants. He became a bridge between cultures, the embodiment of the empire's new spirit. Empress Anya and Emperor Long Ui ruled together, ushering in an unprecedented era of peace and prosperity. Their relationship, built on a foundation of truth, sacrifice, and Shin courage, became a legend. They proved that true Sake love is not about possession but protection, not about conquering but understanding. The story of Anya, the exotic desert flower, has been told for generations, an eternal testament that the universe never places you somewhere by accident. Sometimes a sincere heart and extraordinary courage can create a spectacular upset, changing the Bashan destiny of not just one person, but an entire nation. And that is the story of Anya, of the great reversal that shook an entire empire. It reminds us that the greatest upset is sometimes not about defeating an external enemy, but about transforming the internal enemies of prejudice and hatred into allies of understanding and love. What about you? Are you an Anya in your own story, facing a moment that could define your destiny? Share with us the great reversal you are most proud of in your own life. That moment when you used your courage to overcome adversity. Every comment you leave is a story, a beacon of hope. And if you wish to continue journeying with our channel through the forgotten pages of epic history to find precious lessons for life today, do not forget to hit that subscribe button, because every story is a treasure and we will discover them together.